Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of No More Kids in Scientology. And we are taking a little detour today, you guys, because we did finish chapter 2 of the book From Here to the Great Unknown. And the next chapter coming up is going to be speaking about Lisa's experiences inside of Scientology schools. So, for those who are new to our channel, we expose every time we speak about the subject the corruption of Scientology as it applies to all the kids who grew up in Scientology and are denouncing Scientology, denouncing our parents, denouncing L. Ron Hubbard, denouncing all the systems that were in place to recruit and grab kids to be part of Scientology. Kids cannot consent to be part of Scientology, period, full stop. There is no defense. There is no reason. It makes absolutely no sense at all to have kids involved. So, we're going to be doing a deep dive and reacting to another piece of reporting, another investigation that was done by Tony Ortega, reporting on Scientology's abusive treatment of children from a story he's called Daycare from Hell. And that story, Lisa Marie Presley helped to expose to the general public. And there is very unsettling conditions within the Scientology-run schools that are literally being called out in current lawsuits. We covered that a couple of days ago. We covered the new Delphi lawsuit as they are being accused of covering up for a man who got convicted of what you guys can already imagine. He got convicted. So, with these recent lawsuits that are shedding light on how the Delphi schools alleged sex essay cover ups, we're going to connect these stories to Lisa Marie's crucial role as a whistleblower. Um, and this was one of the things that is, again, not really known about Lisa, you guys, that she was going to be testifying in the then upcoming criminal trial of Danny Masterson. And she was also going to be testifying for a grand jury that is being conducted into Scientology looking at obstruction of justice. So I read this chapter, The Wall, and I felt that because so much of our audience is coming from what's just been reported about the Elvis situation, they were not going to be familiar with these other Scientology practices. And that's really the big disconnect that we see in terms of like a lot of this stuff that are being reported about the about Lisa Marie is exactly that. Like the Scientology aspect um has not been properly covered. And I do think now that I'm reading this book in terms of Riley that she definitely portrayed things in a positive light um in terms of Lisa's stance, in terms of what Lisa's was talking about Scientology as we've seen. But I think that there's more there than meets the eye. And we really want to start contextualizing because this was a very important story that was that was reissued by Ortega on September 17, 2023. So for those who are not familiar with the story, we're going to contextualize this. Julian Short's production, The Scientology Daycare from Hell. So this man that you see right here, his name is Julian Schwartz. He's also a kid that grew up in Scientology. He was, as Ortega says here, he was back in 2015 when we first wrote about him. There hadn't been any court testimony about Julian Schwartz or his deeds as the enforcer for David Miscavige. And here Ortega's talking about Julian Schwartz being the enforcer for David Miscavige. So Julian Schwartz was also an enforcer for Debbie Cook. That's how he got started. And Debbie Cook, for those of you who don't know her, she was the so-called commanding officer of the Flag Service Org, the hotel in Florida, which is where I was trafficked as a child. So this man was first being used in the capacity of enforcer for Debbie Cook, and then he got transferred across state lines all the way to California to, you know, do more of these enforcing things that they do in Scientology. That would come years later as the trial of Danny Masterson, and like the rest of the people sitting in the court during the second trial, we were stunned to see a photo of Schwartz posted on a screen in the courtroom, the same photo that Leah Remini and Yashara Lee posted to the Substack this weekend. So here is the story, you guys, basically. Scientology's Daycare from Hell, the scandal that Scientology managed to keep hidden until now. Written by Ortega. Ellen was driving back from an outing in San Diego with her daughter when she got the call. Ellen is not her real name, but this account is exactly how she told it to us. It was Julian, an ethics officer at Scientology's org in Los Angeles. Julian was one of the young masters at arms who enforce Scientology's myriad rules and regulations. If you heard from him, it usually meant you were in some kind of trouble. Ellen knew. I need to see you right away, he told her. No, tell me what it is now, Ellen answered. If she was in trouble, she wanted to know right away. So this is kind of how they were always contacting us. And you guys, in Scientology, you are a surrogate. You are a submissive of the people that call you. If they call you, if you don't answer, the ethics will escalate. If you don't return their call, the ethics will escalate. The punishments will get worse. So there's always a threat. And very much they run everything like they own you. Like she's saying, no, tell me. And he's like, no, like, I'm not going to tell you, you need to come see me. You need to come see me. So they really much like pull on your strings all the time. So then she goes, I can't really get into it. You're going to be getting a call from a police detective, said Julian. Ellen frowned. Why would a Scientology ethics officer be telling her that she'd be getting a call from the police? Well, and then again, you guys, why is that even weird that anyone would get a call from the police? Well, because in Scientology, they tell you that the police, that the justice system that the WOGs use, it's so stupid, it's so ridiculous, it's so substandard to any of the technology that L. Ron Hubbard pitched. So they always reframe it like, you don't want the police, like they don't even know what in the hell they're doing. They're just, it's almost like a nuisance. Scientology uses the police for when it's convenient for them, but they don't believe in the justice system. They don't believe in following laws. They don't believe in following any of those rules. They really go very, very far with, at the hotel, we do what we want. And we never get involved with the police. And they tell you as a child, never talk to the police, never cooperate, never answer any questions, just say no to anything they want to say, never get Scientology into any type of court problem, because if you put Scientology in the courts and they're held accountable, you're threatening the existential existence of all planetary hope. That a convicted felon really did a lot to get it all put there. That's how they put it to you. L. Ron Hubbard struggled so much, sacrificed so much so that you could have this. So even if someone does something wrong, then who cares? Because it's like, well, why are we gonna risk all the planet going clear, going OT, going to all the delusionary states that they sell at the hotel? Why would we put that in jeopardy when we could just ignore it, obstruct justice, pretend it doesn't work, sell people programs to go clean it and clear it inside of the hotel, the Scientology hotel or commercial building? They do this in both. So that's really what we're talking about here, that the ethics officers, you are a literal slave. You're completely subservient. If you don't answer, they'll get you in more and more trouble. So, and Scientologists never really expect to ever call or talk to the police. And it's weird that you would get that, because even the ethics officers would tell you don't speak to police. So the fact that Julian called her to tell her she's going to get a call from a detective, that means that Scientology was in full-blown crisis management mode, which is what they call it in the hotel. This is the euphemism that they use, you guys. It's called flap handling. A flap, and this would have been a legal flap, because this is a flap is anything. It's another euphemism again. So they always go with these very generic, broad strokes words. Flap describes anything that could put Scientology in trouble in any way, shape, or form. Anything that jeopardizes Scientology as a hotel, as a building. Anything that the cops could come in and check and inspect and get inside, all of that, those are called threats. Those are called legal flaps. So Scientology has an entire crisis management department, the one that was famously run for decades and decades and decades by Mike Rinder, where they organize how to sanitize, clean up, erase, destroy evidence of anything related to this. Or they're manipulating, pulling strings, calling before, oh yeah, I really want to get you a heads up. A detective is going to call you. Like, why in the hell is Julian giving a heads up that the detective is going to call the Scientologist? Because they need to safe point the situation, you guys. That's part of the flap handling. That's how they handle it. They go, how are we going to, deal with this? And they need to handle all people involved. So in this case, it was this woman here that's going by the pseudonym Ellen. So why is a detective going to call? She asked. You're probably also going to be getting a call from, Julian said, and then he named a woman that we're going to refer to as daycare mom. Something happened there, Julian continued. Ellen could do the math. She looked at her daughter, who was just 7, and she seemed all right. Ellen tried not to show much, but she wanted to scream. It had been 2 years since Ellen stopped sending her daughter to daycare mom's house, where she operated a business that catered to other Scientology families. Ellen had a bad feeling about the place then, and now her worst fears were coming true. After she got home, she dropped off her daughter and drove to the org She went to Julian's office at the big blue building, you guys. That's where Julian works. And asked him what in the literal hell is going on. Julian asked her to wait as he brought in daycare mom. He also brought in a Scientology chaplain. And again, you guys, all of these words, a chaplain, the chaplain is the made up position that convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard had to come up with to make his shit sanitized and sound like it was real religious. But the chaplain was just another part of the crisis management operations. It's a code name. The code name. Chaplain is really going to handle the people that have things that they're upset about. If somebody died in your family, oh, really go see the chaplain. Most of the time, there was no chaplain. That's how little they cared about the position, to actually really have somebody there to care for people, except when they needed to do big crisis management cycles, flap handlings, like the one that we're seeing here, where they are in full-blown legal flap handling mode. And this is Julian having to report to David Miscavige, to the RTC rep, to the CO, AOSH, ASHO, John Landine, tell the people at AOLA, tell the people at security, tell the people at, it's always the same people. It's always the same people that are managing flaps. They all work as a team, knowing what each other is doing and thinking and coordinating thereby and therewith. So that's how it's working more as a conspiracy, because it is literally, that is the definition that they use for themselves. We are a team. A team has a tendency to know what each other member is doing and thinking and coordinating thereby and therewith. And that is the definition of a team. It is people who cooperate one with another to push forward a common purpose. And they normally get along great. That's how these people work. So for all of you that are confused, maybe somebody didn't know, maybe someone had no clue, double check what that definition that I just gave you, that they were making us recite ad nauseum on a daily basis, at least at Debbie Cook's hotel. I can tell you, at that hotel, she was obsessed with that definition. Every day she wanted to chant it out. Okay, we're going to do Chinese school, you guys. I mean, when people say North Korea, they called it Chinese school. And we had to regurgitate definitions at the air over and over and over ad nauseum, so that we would really continue to be groomed by our disgusting groomer, Debbie Cook. So we've gone through the easy part, you guys. This is going to get yucky. So trigger warning. If you need to leave right now, go ahead. This is a great time to hop off the live. Just leave a like, put a comment, subscribe, and help us continue this journey. But this is going to get very graphic and very disgusting. So we're talking about unthinkable essay of very young children. So it had been 2 years since Ellen stopped sending her. Now her worst fears are coming true. After she got home, she dropped off her daughter and drove to the org. She went to Julian's office, asked him what's going on. Julian asked her to wait as he brought in the daycare mom, and he also brought in the Scientology chaplain, a man in a suit who was introduced as an attorney for the church. Oh, so they did even have an attorney there present. Isn't it interesting? Daycare mom then began speaking. What's weird about the attorney being there present, you guys, is that very rare. I mean, I only saw Monique Yingling maybe a couple of times, but attorneys did not come to the hotels. Attorneys usually didn't get much of a front row seat like that. You never really saw them walking around. At least at Debbie Cook's hotel, she hated attorneys. She didn't want them around. There was no attorneys coming around anywhere. So they usually would, I guess, take the meetings outside or whatever, but we never saw them coming around. So it is kind of weird here that there is an attorney there present during this whole transaction. Quote, my son was molesting the girls at the daycare for over a year. Your daughter was one of them, and we're just coming clean about it. Unquote. Ellen sat stunned as daycare mom, then went into a Scientology practice of giving time, place, form, and event, and methodically describing that her son had been doing to each of the girls and how many times. That was hard to hear, Ellen says. So, yeah. Time, place, form, and event. What have I told you guys ad nauseum? In what world are these people having a benefit of the doubt when their data mining operation is time, place, form, and event? Is data mining that information? Is figuring out how, once that information is data mined, now how are we going to obstruct justice exactly? What type of information are we really going to share with the attorney? And what are we going to loop him out about? They loop out their attorneys. They're stupid attorneys that couldn't have been more gullible, easy to bamboozle, easy to completely just. There's only one thing that they give an F about here, is the hope of L. Ron Hubbard's technology not getting a shred of scrutiny, because that would compromise the eternity of every single thetan in the entire galaxy. And I know it sounds far-fetched, and I know it sounds infantile AF, and that's because it is. It's an infantile delusion from degenerates that are literally paying us grown adults to be indoctrinated to think that way. And then they turn around and groom their child to say, I'm going to groom you in the most incredible advanced things that you're going to get a lot of power, but your power is being eroded. Every single time you're getting abused as a child, your power is being eroded, is being siphoned away from you. And that was by design, not by mistake. Julian then explained that daycare mom had revealed a crime during a sec check. Oh, would you look at that? Julian had explained that daycare mom had revealed the crime during a sec check. So let's do a little quiz here with the chat. Put in the chat, tell me what it means. What does it mean that daycare mom revealed the crime during a sec check? Does anybody know what that means? Does that make sense to anybody here in the chat? Do any of you know or can put an explanation to why Julian explained that the daycare mom had revealed the crime during a sec check? No takers in the chat. No one wants to explain this. Come on, you guys. Somebody must by now know what it means to reveal a crime during a sec check. Any of you? Put a 1 if you know, or a 2 if you don't. Because If y'all are going to be shy, then I'm going to explain it. I'm going to assume that for the 72 of us that are here right now, revealing a crime during is thank you, Cassie. Thank you, Deborah. Revealing a crime during a sec check. A sec check is the interrogations that L. Ron Hubbard developed, the interrogation method, you guys. And we're talking about interrogation. This is full-blown interrogation. If there was a scale from 1 to 10 on extremes, is interrogation level 10. Have you committed any felony for which you have not been coming clean about? Is the type of leading questions, self-incriminating questions that daycare mom had been being asked about when she revealed the crime that she found out what her son was all about doing. So this is what they're doing in there. They're paying to launder this. They're paying it to have it crisis managed by people that complete 2-week courses inside of a hotel. That's who Julian Schwartz is. He's a kid that grew up in Scientology, completed a 2-week course inside of a hotel, and all of a sudden he's the master at arms. That's the training he had to be overseeing, brokering the handling. And they are charging a lot of money for these handlings. Thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of tax write-off dollars. So imagine that here you have daycare mom getting a sec check. She's not going to get this for free, you guys. In Scientology, they're not going to give you a sec check for free. They're going to pull her in, is what they call it. Julian calls her and says, you know what? We need to give you a sec check. You better pay $10,000 because we're about to need to interrogate you for at least, maybe about 40 hours. And, there is a very big sale going on this week that if you pay for 4 intensives, you're going to get 2 free. So with $10,000, you can get 4 intensives. And then with that, we can then sec check you. And then from that, we can then find out and video record and transcribe all the self-admitted criminal behavior that you're about to float away. Compliments of the sec check. Compliments of the technology of a convicted felon, L. Ron Hubbard. A fraudster that is in no way, shape, or form an American-bred god, as much as these people are going to be desperate to continue pitching him as that. But we thought he was a god, an American-bred god. That's what they told us. American-bred a god, and that god brought back this level of unthinkable dysfunction. A sec check or security check is a brutal interrogation that all Scientologists must go through from time to time. The subject of a sec check is asked to hold the sensors of an e-meter, a crude electronic device which simply measures tiny fluctuations in skin galvanism. But the Scientologist, the machine is a sophisticated tool which can detect if you are lying, with the utter confidence of the e-meter's ability to tell when they're holding back information. Scientologists spill their guts under the tough questionings of ethics officers. And yeah, may we add the fact that you're going to be locked up against your will. While you're getting interrogated, you're going nowhere. There is no excuse in the world that will make the sec check stop. Nothing. Nothing. You are under the full and utter dominance. You're full-blown subjugated to nothing. You have no rights. You have no merits. If you feel worse, then it means that you have more criminal acts that we haven't found out about. If you're not floating on the needle, If you're not saying L. Ron Hubbard is amazing, this is so fantastic, I'm so glad I'm divulging all this criminal activity, I'm feeling so great about it. If that's not happening, then you're going to stay there longer and longer and longer. And 5 hours later, they're still asking you, well, I'll repeat the question. What type of withhold don't you want us to know about you? Take a look right there. What are you looking at right now? Right there. What was that? What are you thinking about? And you just get a robot that's doing that 24/7, 365 there with you until you say, this is amazing, this is incredible, I can't believe it. All the criminal acts that I'm admitting to here in full are really making me want to go free. That's how it works, you guys. That's how disgusting it works. In this case, daycare mom had spent tens of thousands of dollars to go through something called OT eligibility. Oh, the daycare mom, you guys. Now, just so you see how ridiculous this all is, for the daycare mom to be doing her OT eligibility, that means that she would have to have been a clear. So imagine that level of superiority complex that they're paying to have, to be told that they're clear. Oh, you're clear. You're such a special person. You just attested the state of clear. Well, this woman attested the state of clear, and guess what? She already knew. She already knew what her son had been doing. So, way to go, state of clear. Her conscience was not clear, was it? The crime was only picked up because she said, oh, I'm clear now. Let me get to the OTs. That's the little precious that all the Scientology parents are obsessed about. I want to do the OTs. I want to read the confidential. I really want to get to the levels. I really want to be admitted. I really want to prove that I'm worth this. I don't care how much thousands of dollars I need to pay. Where do I sign up? This to them is the most incredible thing. So daycare mom already knew what her son had done, and yet she still achieved the so-called state of clear. Not great, you guys? That you can be full-blown obstructing of justice, which is a full serious felony. But L. Ron Hubbard says you're clear, so I guess you're great. And with a little help here of an OT eligibility, you're getting a full-blown crisis managed to launder what you're already highly aware is a full-blown felony. But in the hotel, they, phrase it different. They throw word salad at it. They call it, oh, it's a withhold. Oh, you floated it. Like, what's the problem? Everyone move on. There's nothing to see here. Let's just go to the next thing. Let's just go up the bridge. Let's go up the bridge is what they say. As Claire Headley explained to us during our survey of Scientology courses up the bridge, a member isn't allowed to start the OT levels, which themselves can cost thousands of dollars each, until passing OT preps and OT eligibility, which includes a SEC check. Interesting, you guys. So here it is, Claire Headley, who was RTC rep of PAC, that was in charge of the OT eligibility. And how many extreme out to these, Claire, would you say y'all would be, getting informed about exactly? Because, turns out that was the other little way for them to, when it's the subject that we're talking about, you guys, everything was out to D. So if two adults were found to be, blowing each other in a bathroom in one of the Scientology hotels, they would just call that out to D. If the man forced himself onto the woman, that's also out to D. If the woman forced herself onto the man, out to D. Now, the only time it changed, that euphemistic term to launder what they're knowing is going on, because Repeat, they video record it. Repeat, they transcribe it. Repeat, they go to the victim and the perpetrator and they data mine both. So they have it from both. No one didn't know what transpired. Everybody found out what transpired. Everything was admitted. Well, this is what they call it when is the type of situation we're discussing. And it's a code name so that they never have to write the actual stuff because, I guess this is all it takes to bamboozle any judge, any journalist, anybody that has a shred of cell brains inside their head. Apparently, all it takes is to call it this for it to no longer be labeled this, right? So it's no longer being called this anymore. It's just called this. And there's no word of felony. There's no word of obstruction of justice. There's no word of legality. There's no word, no. But interesting that the lawyer is there present in the case of this exact situation. Imagine being that lawyer. Imagine being mandated reporters in order for them to keep their law license. All of you Scientology lawyers, FYI, you are all mandated reporters. So in what world are you mandated reporters and your client is doing what they're doing to the kids, either completely behind your backs because complete clueless. I mean, we literally have it here that the literal lawyer is in the room as this handling is taking place. So are you not aware, or are you aware and you just don't give an F? Because that's what in the hell we need to start understanding from the Scientology lawyers themselves right about MF now. In what world are you all holding law licenses and you're not acting in furtherance of mandated reporting? Because I'm sure if any of y'all can call Claire Headley right here, she can give you exact examples of how the OT eligibilities covered up systemic, institutionalized, extreme out to these at an industrial size scale. Because every week they have a report of how many OT eligibilities came through the lines. So anyone that had any of this, they were finding out time, place, form, and event, when it happened, how it happened, who did it, how many times they did it, where they did it, to who else do they do it. Compliments of, Scientology's intelligence investigative apparatus, which includes kids such as myself being used to data mine these felonies to get them laundered for a quick IRS tax break. That's what the IRS gives these people, a tax break. Oh, you want to launder some out to D, extreme out to D? Yeah, we'll give you a tax break. The IRS is waiting to get all the tax breaks they can possibly give to all the people going there to get their OT eligibility on, which is literally giving more of like, get your freak on. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's just completely indefensible, completely disgusting. But apparently there's all manner of explanations as to what needs to be done. Here's, Tony Ortega really explaining it so that you really get groomed and you really get how it is thought by the people that are doing this BS. Because why do we keep getting explanations that are complete garbage about the word salad that all the deluded people thought at the hotel needed to be done that way? Why is that important? Here you go. OT eligibility in preparation of the operating thetan. Claire Headley explained to us, up the bridge, a member isn't allowed to start the OT levels. OT preps, OT eligibility includes a sec check. Scientologists can begin these high-level courses, Claire explained, without first going through an intense interrogation to find if they have evil intentions. Really, Claire? That's really what we were looking for? Evil intentions? Are you really sure? Because this is what was being looked for. And this is what was being monetized. And this is what was being given tax break incentives. Right? Right or wrong, Claire? This BS that we really wanted to find out if people had an evil intention. Really? With what type of straight face can you be regurgitating the rhetoric that was taught to you at that hotel? Because apparently there's been no revision of the explanations as time evolves. It's always part of the withhold, but not the rest. It's always misdirect the auditor. During the sec check, convinced that she couldn't defeat the all-knowing emeter, daycare mom had revealed information she'd been holding back. And here's again another fake pitch. Tony Ortega, during the sec check, convinced that she couldn't defeat the all-knowing emeter if the auditor who was auditing daycare mom, which could have included being a minor, plenty of minors were being used to be the OT elig sec checkers of adults. So if that child failed to find out the withhold that this mom had, which in this case included criminal activity, then it was his head that was going to be put on a pike, which is the exact word used by L. Ron Hubbard. Put their heads on a pike, show everyone what will happen if they miss a withhold. So that's the crazy Lululand that we have here going on with this sec check. And, oh, she really was, convinced she couldn't defeat the all-knowing emeter. L. Ron Hubbard says if you kept a withhold, then his technology, his bullshit, unworkable technology was not going to work. That's how the lie went. Oh, no, you can't keep any withholds from me because if you withhold anything, the amazing technology you just paid tens of thousands of dollars for isn't going to work. Isn't that great, you guys? The mom revealed the information that she'd been holding back, all her withholds that had been missed. That her teenage son was a predator and that for more than a year he had molested girls other parents dropped off at her house. Julian told Ellen that as soon as he heard about that confession, he told daycare mom that it was her responsibility to call the police. I told her, you're either going to report the crime or I will, Julian claimed. But even though the crime had been reported, Ellen was told that the mothers were being asked to keep the matters within the church. Word on the street is that churches are also mandated reporters, Julian. So you should really check on that too. Because plenty of people have already told us and sent us the info that even churches are mandated reporters. So it'd be interesting to find out when that changed in California. Ellen was told that if the daycare son were charged, he was 17 and still a juvenile, he'd be subjected to psychiatric treatment and medication. We're begging you not to press charges because he'll be subject to psych evals. We want to avoid that, the attorney said to her. Damn. The attorney. Well, now we just got ourselves a double whammy of mandated reporter. The attorney told her that a psych eval was not good. So there you go, you guys. In case you were wondering if Scientology attorneys believe and people have a PhD in doctors, they don't. Because apparently, per Tony Ortega, the attorney said, quote, "We're begging you not to press charges because he'll be subjected to psych evals." We want to avoid that. So someone holding a law license in that hotel, defending that hotel, orchestrating the crisis management that the hotel sells, apparently is very, very pressed to make sure he doesn't have psych evals. It's very specific here, you guys, what the attorney said, because it's like evals. Like, they don't even want a psychiatrist to evaluate them. Could it have anything to do with the fact that they're able to see through the dysfunction? All of the smokes and mirrors that Scientology is placing all around all of this dysfunction so that it can keep going? Because this is quite disgusting and damning. It's one thing that the Scientology parents, through a lot of misinformation and a lot of garbage and a lot of feeding each other frenzy about all psychiatrists represent the end and the doom of the whole entire world. And anyone who did that profession, I had a cousin, you guys, that was studying, that was not a Scientologist and was studying something that included mental health. When she said she wanted to study that, my parents told me she's a suppressive. We knew it. We knew it since she was young. We knew there was something about her. So leave it to my ignorant, stupid, idiotic, cult-ridden zombie parents to think that twisted, to be that stupid, to be that ignorant. This is an attorney that is begging to not have a psych eval done. Why? Because that opens up an investigation. Then Child Protective Services has to get involved. Then they have to start talking to more mothers, talking to more kids. Then the crime can actually be revealed and not laundered inside of a hotel by people that complete a 2-week course. Scientologists are taught to regard psychiatry and its medications with a white-hot hate. The thought of daycare mom's son on psych drugs in custody was worse to the Scientologists than doing nothing about the young man who had molested their daughters. Yeah. And I mean, this is what we were saying, Ortega. Scientologists are taught to regard psychiatry and its medications with white-hot hate. But in what world is an attorney that is not a paid surrogate of convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard? An attorney that's being called upon to consult on the law to make sure that the law is not being broken, bent. The one here saying that he's very, very begging to not press charges, to not get into the psych evals. So Julian was very clever in the way that he did this. He made sure that it was reported to the police, but then he turned it over to the chaplain like it was a church situation. Remember, guys, how I told you like that Scientology didn't give an F about chaplains except when they wanted to run crisis management like this one, where they could embellish, oh, they're all getting the counseling from the chaplain. All these mothers that are being told don't press charges by the chaplain. And it was clear that he was making one thing sure, that none of us filed charges or filed lawsuits, she says. I told them there was no way in hell I was going to allow that. After the meeting, Ellen did hear from the police detective who called her last out of all the parents involved. Ellen's daughter had been at the daycare at least and hadn't been victimized as much as the others. The problem, the detective told her, was that none of the other parents wanted to press charges. None. Ellen called each one of them and they told her it was against Scientology rules to prosecute a fellow Scientologist. Not without the permission from the International Justice Chief, a man named Mike Ellis, who members almost never saw or heard from. The mothers were concerned that if they pressed charges, they would lose their OT levels, Ellen says. So, does anyone still have a doubt or reservation as to whose priorities couldn't be less straight than the Scientology mothers and the Scientology fathers, who will go through whatever lengths to put their kids in harm's way and then make it about themselves, make it about their little delusional status, make it about blaming the kid for having pulled it in. Because remember, they don't believe in victims. Even as a child, all that happened to you, you must have been really deranged in another lifetime to have that happen so early on. Those are things that they would tell us. Look for something disgusting that you did in your prior lifetime, which is going to explain why, as a young child, you are getting essayed, because you're pulling it in and you're also tutti flowing. They have a million ways to use their word salad to program it and make it so that you cannot see any way, shape, or form where you were not responsible at that same level as the adult that essayed you. So just make sure that that really actually sinks in as we're getting into the weeds of this disgusting thing. What she means is that when the mothers, like the daycare mom, also reached their OT eligibility in order to go to the high-level courses, they would also be interrogated as if they had sued or prosecuted fellow Scientologists. They lose their right to spend tens of thousands of dollars per level to reach the top of Scientology's spiritual attainment. I mean, again, you guys, they sacrifice their kids. Their kids are fair game to sacrifice. Scientology mothers have one priority, L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard's wishes, L. Ron Hubbard's desires, L. Ron Hubbard's orders, L. Ron Hubbard's tell me what to do, L. Ron Hubbard, I want you to be my grandmaster daddy. Oh, you want me to act completely out of my mind? Oh, yeah, no worries. Is that going to get me my next OT level? Then where do I sign up? What type of protection is in place for kids that grow up in Scientology? Truly ask yourselves that question. Ellen was infuriated. She said she didn't need anyone's permission to press charges, but the other moms didn't budge. Each of them and Ellen had been instructed by Julian how to talk to the police detective to convince him that the daycare son should not be prosecuted. Well, and shout out to you at the LAPD that were so easy to convince. I mean, imagine that people that complete a 2-week course inside of a hotel can run circles around the LAPD detectives. Let that sink in for a second. As the LAPD relationship with Scientology comes into more scrutiny, as more and more things continue to get corroborated about the systemic corruption, the pay for play that's going on between these two. You rub my back, I'll rub yours So apparently Julian Schwartz, a kid that didn't go to school, has no law license, has no degrees. His big claim to fame is that he completed a 2-week course inside of a hotel. And that's all it took for the LAPD to, get completely bamboozled. Ellen didn't go along with it. She not only helped the detective on his investigation, she personally rounded up the other 4 models and took them to meet them with a prosecutor at the district's attorney's office. I actually got the other mothers to the DA's office and got the kids interviewed by the police detective using the doll. Yeah, using the doll, since we were we've been using dolls since ever. You guys, like, dolls are available in every single Scientology course room. Oh, grab a doll. Let's just have a drill. Let's just pretend. So it's making sense that they're using a little doll here because all Scientology kids are groomed with dolls since the very beginning. With the limited cooperation they received, the DA's office charged the young man with a crime that only resulted in a sentence of probation. Very, very limited cooperation. I at least wanted him on the sex offenders list, but I didn't even get that, Ellen says. And I mean, again, you guys, this is a mother that went against all odds. She said no. She fought him off. She tried to get the other moms to come to their senses, but nobody comes to their senses because they're so pressed to be told how amazing they are by the members of their hotel that it doesn't matter. That supersedes their kids every single turn of the way. This is pretty much the Priscilla Presley archetype type of mom. And this mom that actually went and advocated for her child is the Lisa Marie Presley mom. And this is a mom that Lisa would have spoken to talk about this, to get this story out, to get this denounced. Ellen was so disgusted with how the affair had been handled, she decided to leave Scientology after having grown up in a rather prominent church family. Once she did, her parents, who remained in Scientology, cut her off as they followed the Scientology policy of disconnection. Ellen shared with us a lengthy document she wrote to her father explaining her the reasons for leaving Scientology. In the document, she tells her father that not only had the daycare son escaped the punishment he really deserved, that Scientology's way of handling the matter had involved the young man spending time in the homes of victims doing a liability formula. Oh no. Oh no, you guys. When Scientologists are considered to have committed a transgression of some kind, they can be assigned a lower condition to reflect their lack of status. Liability is one of the least severe conditions, and making up for it requires an involved program of contrition, including asking permissions for others to rejoin the non-liable population. Daycare son had reportedly spent time in the homes of his victims so he could accomplish this program, Ellen told her father. Isn't that great, you guys, that the solution for him to make amends, as orchestrated by Julian Schwartz, as masterminded allegedly by Julian Schwartz, but don't forget that Julian has more and more and more handlers above him. So this is always a pyramid inverted that goes like this. Everybody just sees the pyramid go up, but the pyramid comes down like that too. Executive, 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 executive. This one tells this one, this one, this one, this one. This one's still this one, this one, this one. It's all, everybody's telling each other everything at all times, writing reports, sending it, paging each other, this is what happened. I just found out that the person had a withhold. They're about to admit to more. Let me send you the video. Watch the video. Look what they just said. Videos being shipped off to from building to building there, whatever. People just grabbing them. Oh, I'm going to do a critique. So all manner of kids were watching these videos. These disgusting videos of sessions. They couldn't be more nauseating. They couldn't be more disgusting. They couldn't be more dehumanizing. But apparently in Scientology, they call that a very religious thing that they're doing in there. Imagine what that really actually means. When she found out about it, Ellen says that she was shocked. I thought for sure Scientology was going to declare them all, Ellen says, referring to Scientology's practice of excommunicating members by declaring them suppressive persons. But the mom is still in the cult, and so is the kid. They let them do the conditions to make up the crime, and then they even let him babysit. That's when I never went back, Ellen says with disgust. So the self-admitted you-know-what got rewarded with more time, more unfeathered access to underage kids. One of Ellen's friends had also recently left the church, and at one point, Ellen was asked by her friend why she left the organization. The friend was livid after learning about this incident, saying that publicizing it could cause Scientology major pain and might even bring the cult down. The friend knew a major celebrity who had been having some doubts and who became irate about learning what happened at the daycare. So, again, you guys, just so we can see, Lisa Marie Presley, this was not going to be done to Riley or Ben with Lisa knowing about it and sweeping it under any rug. So that you had any questions about Lisa's maternal instincts did kick in. Unlike Priscilla's maternal instincts that were nowhere to be found when this happened to her own daughter. When Priscilla did the exact same thing these mothers are doing. Outsourcing that to have it all laundered at the hotel. But this is Lisa literally being irate. Irate. The two of them got busy gathering information about the case. Each of them told Ellen that if she went public, they would pay for her to have an attorney and any other expenses that she incurred. The friend, meanwhile, has press reporters trying to get them to do this story. But the friend was told repeatedly that the detective wasn't talking about the case when he was called by reporters and that there's no court documents because the perpetrator had been a juvenile at the time. Not by mistake, is it, you guys? Oh, he's 17. Why do you think that Julian was so pressed to, let's call the police in this case because we can get ahead of it. We'll tell all the moms to not press anything. We'll make sure that he's still a minor so that everything can remain sealed. And then, nobody saw anything. Crisis management. Mitigating consequences by artificially blocking justice by Julian, I completed a 2-week course inside of a hotel, so therefore I have no law license, but, apparently you give orders to Scientology attorneys and the LAPD, Julian. Imagine being you. While Ellen was willing to talk, she didn't want to be named, but the other parents weren't interested in talking. Scientology wanted it kept quiet and wanted it kept in-house. And they were successful. I mean, again, you guys, when have they not been successful in 74 years? Very, very few times. Very, very few times. And you know why that is? It's not by mistake, it's by design. Because they're running this legal flap handling mode. Every time these situations come up, they go back into their same rote pattern of successful actions. What worked for us to cover it last time? Oh, let's just repeat them. Let's just do it again. It worked last time. Several years later, the friend and the Scientology celebrity are still fuming that Scientology was able to keep a lid on the incident and that the daycare mom and her son are still active members. But I mean, again, you guys, if you do as you're told, you are going to be a forever active member. Case in point, these two right here. Daycare mom and her son. Case in point, Danny Masterson. He's been told, he's been doing as he's told. He's rotting in jail now, but he's cooperating, so he's not a declared suppressive. Laura is a declared suppressive. I'm a declared suppressive. Liz Ferris is a declared suppressive. Nora is a suppressive. Jenna is a suppressive, but not these two. No, these two are in so-called good standing. Because again, they paid to have this laundered. That's what Scientology sells. So stop with the stupidity about like, oh, we thought we were getting a religious experience. Shut the F up. You're full of shit. Daycare son is now in his mid-20s. When we called him last week, he told us he didn't know what we were talking about when we told him that we were going to write a story about the daycare incident. We explained that we had no interest in naming him and that we were concerned with how Scientology had handled the matter. But he continued to say he didn't understand what I was referring to. We thanked him and he ended the call. Ellen, meanwhile, says that despite the backing she received from the Scientology celebrity, she felt unsure about making the story well known. It is a delicate thing, she told us. My daughter's a teenager now. She doesn't really remember it. She received another round of encouragement from a friend to do this story and then reluctantly agreed to talk about it. Unfortunately, this story is all too typical. It is not by far the only instance of essay of children in Scientology that has not been previously seen the light of day, says former spokesman Mike Rinder. Oh, look at you, Mike Rinder, getting quoted by Ortega like a true publicist that you are. Quote, unfortunately, this story is all too typical. It is not by far the only instance of essay of children in Scientology. Tell us something we don't already know, Mike Rinder. Tell us how far it really goes instead of this sanitized quote. It's not by far the only instance. Look at you telling part of the withhold, but not the rest. Look at you telling part of the withhold, but not the rest. If I had you on the meter right now, Mike Rinder, your needle would be dirty as fuck. Mike Rinder, who knows Ellen well and is familiar with the underlying facts in the case, says, quote, while Julian played on the fear of psychiatry, this isn't always a factor in the cases. But there are two fears that are always overriding concerns. One, the terror of negative press and bad PR that such circumstances would generate. The terror. Two, the hatred and fear instilled into all the Scientologists of WOG justice. Aww. Are the Scientologists just so scared, you guys? These are grown adult men and women we're talking about that need to be given a dose of reality. I don't give an F how scared you are of the WOG justice. I could give a literal shred of a literal F. Mike Rinder. Oh yeah, they're really terrorized about the WOG justice. They're just so scared. They're trembling inside of the hotel. Trembling. But meanwhile, why are they not trembling when it comes to violating the law? Because another one of your false pitches here about how Julian, it was the attorney, the Scientology attorney, Mike Rinder. In case you didn't keep tabs on what in the hell you were asked to comment on, Ortega said that it was the attorney that begged to not get a psych eval. So what do you know about attorneys getting told? Attorneys that are mandated reporters, you would know that, Mike Rinder. You would know that an attorney, in order to hold a law license, is a mandated reporter. So in what world is a mandated reporter telling a victim of a criminal act not to go get a standard eval from a medical professional just because you and your little stupid ass buddies at the hotel thought that your 2-week courses were better than a PhD of a doctor? Just because convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard told you that? Because it's you who has been putting that pitch out there. L. Ron Hubbard was a degenerate, destitute drug addict by the time he was about to leave Earth, Mike Rinder. So imagine you still just lying through your teeth with all these quotes that are always sanitized, that are always short stories, that are always full of literal shit. The terror of the negative press. Yeah. The terror of people finding out the facts so that they can protect children. Is that what you meant? Is that what you meant? Because your little stupid delusion about you saving a world falls apart the minute people find out that you were trafficking kids at an industrial size scale. Your little delusion of all these pitches that you just type real quick and try to sanitize an image that is so beyond repair. Literally, your image cannot be laundered. You're literally go knock on the door of Jeffrey Epstein. Go knock on his door. Oh, another quote. Quote, the only reason people are not declared is the fear the church has that it might somehow prompt the perpetrators to come clean and spill the beans about how it was covered up by the church. After all, if there is any application of Scientology, SP, and disconnection tech that would ever be applicable, it is for a child SA abuser. Oh, look at you, Mike Rinder, still finding out ways how the technology could be put to good use. Isn't that great, you guys? That Mike Rinder is still goo goo gaga for L. Ron Hubbard. The convicted felon that he propped up and brought all around the world doing his PR pro bono. Don't forget. Mike Rinder did all his work pro bono like the idiot that he is. He sanitized L. Ron Hubbard's image for free. He literally sacrificed his entire life, decades and decades and decades, for free. Now, we're talking about when he was in. But then, even when he's out, look at him. Look at him still finding ways to make L. Ron Hubbard sound, oh yeah, we really should be applying the disconnection technology when it comes to a child SA abuser. Oh yeah, that comes like a really great thing to do. Scientology routinely offers up the example of an abusive spouse to justify application of SP disconnection tech. Again, Mike Rinder, you with your bullshit tech, it's not a tech. It's not a tech. You are an infantile imbecile to think that L. Ron Hubbard's disgusting extremist rhetoric that you used as a shield to let yourself have your way with kids, unfettered access to them, is tech. Imagine you calling this tech. Still, this late in the game, Mike Rinder, you left how many decades ago and you still talk like you're Goo Goo Gaga for L. Ron Hubbard? Unbelievable. The implied message is that even a moron would understand that you should disconnect from such a person and they should be made known to warn others. Yet here we are, another example of where the SP declare and disconnection policy should have been used and it is just ignored. Unbelievable. The disconnection policy didn't apply to this, Mike Rinder. How can you be this stupid? How can you be this stupid? It's the law that applied to the situation, not the bullshit policies of convicted felon L. Ron Hubbard. So when are you going to start pitching your altered importances to purport that whatever you and your grandmaster daddy L. Ron Hubbard concocted was here to save a world? Absolutely disgusting. You're here, and here's another example. The policy should have really been applied. Meanwhile, Scientology's forced Ellen's parents to disconnect from her because the crime of no longer choosing to call yourself a Scientologist is so much worse than molesting children. Literal quote from not from L. Ron Hubbard, from Mike Rinder. Oh, Scientology disconnected you from their parents. Number one, her parents was your junior, Mike Rinder. So you do know this case very well. This brought the child essay right to your footsteps. But look at you crafting your cacamimi stories that every other journalist swallows from you. Because you do know how to make it sound real sanitized. So this is part one, you guys. There's part two. But this is to show you that Lisa Marie Presley was intended to blow the whistle. And the powers that be were very, very scared because they knew some of us they cannot control. Some of us they cannot tell us to shut the F up. It's not going to work. Some of us see through their pathetic schemes, racketeering, criminal conspiracy that they all got themselves ensnared with, and they're nowhere on the public record repudiating, atoning, saying they're wrong. They've done nothing wrong according to them. They just wanted to save a world and it all went awry because David Miscavige was beating them. But Lisa Marie Presley, oh, she was so off the rails. She was just, her last few years, she was just, how was she not supposed to be when she was being actively gaslit, led in the wrong directions, told that whatever she was perceiving, she wasn't perceiving, that whatever deficiency she had was her fault, that whatever mental health issues she was having, she couldn't go to a doctor just because, like what Mike Rinder said, oh, they all acted so terrorized. Well, why were they acting terrorized, Mike Rinder? Because it would be great to know what type of that terror campaign did you help prop up? That misinformation campaign about how psychiatrists are the worst of this and the worst of that. Could it have been that you and the attorneys figured out that the only way to get your scam called out was by having mandated reporters grab a hold of your victims that didn't end up as full-blown roadkill on the side of the road, unable to speak for themselves anymore, like it's been the case for plenty of other victims? because we're going to be getting into Lisa's experience at a Scientology school. And as we said, she already talked about the out to these that happen early on, just as Priscilla was getting ensnared into Scientology and she was exposing her child to this. And like I said, Priscilla was like the other moms. They wanted Scientology to fix it. They wanted Scientology to be the parent. They wanted a convicted felon, L. Ron Hubbard, to tell them how to think. So, more to uncover. I thank all of you guys for watching, commenting, subscribing. Let's continue advocating for the day that there is no more kids in Scientology. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you all soon.